Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss John Wick, Chapter 4, starring Keanu Reeves, Donnie Yen, Bill Skarsgård, Lawrence Fishburne, Hiroyuki Sanada, Shamir Anderson, Lance Reddick, Rina Sawayama, Scott Adkins, and Ian McShane, directed by Chad Stahelski. Now, before I get into this movie, the first time I saw this movie was in IMAX, and I felt every punch. Or actually, I've seen this movie 3 times, but the first time I felt the punches in IMAX, and same with my Dolby Theater experience, which was the third viewing. The second time, I still felt it, and it was still a big screen, and it was a crowded theater. So the third showing was not that crowded because it was a Monday evening, but the first two were really busy. Like you can imagine, this movie's doing quite well. So let's see what's going on in Chapter 4. And before I do, welcome back to John Wick after I reviewed Chapter 3 all those years ago. So let's get into this one. We open with John Wick, returned by Keanu Reeves, punching a piece of wood like he did in the trailers, as the Bowery King, returned by Lawrence Fishburne, is getting John a suit and a gun as he goes back to the desert and to get his ring back from the Elder and kills the 3 desert people and gets to the guy whom is the Elder John saw in the third film and took his wedding ring in the third film, like I brought up just a second ago. But he says it has been destroyed, and John has no use for the Elder alive and shoots him dead. And I like the opening sequence of how John punches the piece of wood as he's prepared for revenge. But what was the point of the desert scene, as it served no purpose whatsoever in Casablanca? I mean, I thought I'd seen enough of that one after the third film, but other than that, they get some gorgeous shots of the sunrise. But back in New York, the Continental is visited by Harbinger, played by Clancy Brown, as Winston, returned by Ian McShane, has 1 hour until his building is exploded by Marquis, played by Pennywise himself, Bill Skarsgård, because his building is condemned, as his front desk clerk and friend, Sharon, returned by Lance Reddick, may he rest in peace, comes with him and to get shot by Marquis, and that kind of made me sad as he passed away days before this movie was released. He gets shot by the movie's bad guy. So I was heartbroken by this scene. Marquis brings in from Paris a deadly assassin, but blind Kane, played by Donnie Yen, who kind of reminds me of the character from the Marvel Cinematic Comics Daredevil, as he reluctantly accepts to kill John and for saving him and his daughter, Mia, while John is a friend until he had no choice but to accept the assignment. And that shot in a building in Paris is beautiful, as I can feel his pain, and the movie does a good job at making me care for the characters. In Japan, we follow the tracker, played by Shamir Anderson, along with his pet German Shepherd dog, I'll say, as they get a room at the Continental there, while we follow Akira, played by Rina Sawayama, which is her first acting gig. She's usually a singer. And her father, Shimazu, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, as he goes upstairs to talk with John, while Akira is worried about his presence, as it's a big bad sign. And as soon as Marquis' bodyguards enter the picture, while Akira evacuates the building, while she comes by up and warns him and stays with John while Shimazu deals with the bodyguards and the other bodyguards along with Kane, while they refuse to surrender their firearms, as Kane visits another old friend with Shimazu, as he'll have no choice but to kill him. But that comes later, as they begin an explosive action sequence, and I like the production design of this movie, and this action scene will be epic, as this entire movie is fucking epic. John and Akira fight together against Marquis' minions and bodyguards, while Shimazu sends a couple of sumo wrestlers to only get killed, and Kane at first eats some ramen, let's say, until he starts kicking ass and sets up booby traps. And I'm thinking, this guy is Daredevil from the Marvel Comics, and the sound effects of the punches and kicks were tremendous on all 3 viewings I had with this movie. Shimazu comes in and saves John and tells him to get the fuck out the way he came, and accepts as he fights off the minions that I get the impression they're impossible to kill in their uniforms, while a couple of bodyguards get at John, and John beats the crap out of most of them with nunchucks. And I couldn't help but notice they protect themselves at times with their arms. Like, are they supposed to be bulletproof? Because I don't remember that in the previous movies. As it raised questions, they have a long sleeve bulletproof vest. And the hitting with the nunchucks was actually funny to me, as it could happen in kung fu ways. Kane gets to John and have a fight, and they don't really kill each other because the tracker tries to shoot John, but he gets out while he puts a bounty for John at $20 million. And I'm thinking he's fucked, as people will go after him while John goes to the garden to kill some people until the tracker comes in as John's boogeyman. And Deathline in the last Puss in Boots movie like in the last Puss in Boots movie, let's say, where he had Death follow him around, so he's Death for John, I'll say, but protects him as nobody kills John but him. And Kane is the same thing, which is really funny, but it took me 3rd viewing to see that, as these scenes with John versus all the bad guys with the tracker, and there were times when they shoot the bad guys twice, and I thought of Zombieland, because one of the rules of killing a zombie is double tapping, or killing anybody in general. Not that I'm an expert, but which made sense for those reasons, while Shimazu fights Kane for the death, while Akira watches, and Kane says to Akira, "I'll be waiting for you," while this prolonged action sequence was fun to watch. Akira goes to John on a train and tells him her father is dead because of him, and says to kill Kane or she will, and takes off, as I did feel sorry for Akira, for losing her father at this point in the movie. Back in New York, Winston tells the Bowery King he has to talk with John, and Winston gives the Bowery King a reason to talk with John, as he wants vengeance among Marquis for blowing up his hotel and killing Sharon. And this is very believable, as it is good acting from Ian McShane and Lawrence Fishburne. Kane tells the tracker to not take a deal from Marquis, as he talks with Marquis, and he suddenly stabs the tracker in the hand and gives him a choice but to pull out the knife or pull his hand out. And he pulls his hand out, which was fucking painful to watch. Like, I was wincing in my seat as the tracker's dog wanted to attack while his bodyguard wants to shoot the dog, but he tells him not to, while John talks with Winston to get information about Marquis, as he wants him dead, and Winston tells John to kill Marquis in a duel in Paris, but first get to Berlin to get his ticket back to his family, which is what's going to happen in the next scene. And the cinematography is great to look at, in my opinion. John gets to a church to talk with his uncle, who happened to die after John killed the elder in the beginning of the movie. And John gets shot unexpectedly, and the new ruler, Katia, I don't know if I'm saying that right, please forgive me, almost kills him by hanging John, but John tells him he'll kill Marquis in the duel. And I was hanging on the edge of my seat when they hang him, as Katia tells him to kill Keela, played by Scott Adkins, in his club, and to collect one of his golden teeth, as Kane is there, and eventually the tracker comes in as they play cards, and if John wins, he kills Keela, and if Keela, the tracker, and Kane win, they kill John. And Keela gives John a couple of aces as he wins the game, while Keela cheats his way to death, and John, as well as Kane, and the tracker fight Keela's goons, and John gives Keela a paper cut with a card, which I don't know how that works, and goes after Keela in his own club, and they have a brutal fucking fight, and I mean brutal, as this guy is a big motherfucker. I mean, he's a big guy, as he kicks John to the middle of his club and sends more of his goons after John, and Keela does eventually get to John and have another brutal fight as John stabs his neck and punches him repeatedly to make him bleed, and the last of his goons come in to get it killed by John, and Keela asks John, why don't you just die? And he pushes him down to the stairs to his death and collects his golden tooth, which is absolutely a fucking brutal death. Just so brutal to the point that people in the theater went, ooh, or... But it was a badass scene, keep in mind. While the tracker and Kane stop each other from killing John, as they can't beat him, join him. And I did like that scene, as it was pretty well done. John delivers the message with the golden tooth and his ticket back to the family as they support his challenge against Marquis, as they have to bring in Winston while delivering that message to Marquis, that John challenges him to a duel, and Marquis accepts as Kane is going to shoot John to his death. And if John wins, Winston gets his hotel rebuilt and back in his hands, as John gets to Paris to discuss the rules of the duel, along with Harbinger, and Paris as has always been gorgeous to look at, as John wants to use pistols, and they'll meet at the location where they met up for the rules in Paris, but by sunrise, and Marquis nominates Kane to shoot John, and Kane doesn't want to have anything to do with this duel. And this scene is beautifully shot, and same goes to the Church of Paris, as John and Kane talk briefly about saying hello to his wife Helen, who was dead before the first movie starts, and they talk about death for a brief time. And seriously, I love these shots as director Chad Stahelski shoots this movie beautifully. Marquis advertises hitmen to kill over the radio before sunrise appears, and while John goes to an abandoned train station to meet with the Bowery King as well as Winston, and the bodyguards think this is madness, and Marquis puts out a bounty for John for $26 million. And lots of people go find and try to kill John, as John asks the Bowery King for a gun to get him close to the church, and they ride underground to get John close to the church, and tells Winston of his burial as loving husband, as so he can be buried next to Helen, which is great. Before the climax begins, we start the long climax with John finding some bad guys on the street and getting hit by a car and kills people with a car he ends up stealing from a bad guy, which was hilarious and over the top. I'll continue with that in a minute. John drives to a place at a roundabout in Paris to only get his car smashed, and fights some bad guys in the middle of the street, which was fucking hysterical, as people are at times hitting John but keep hitting the bad guys, while the tracker gets his dog, to kill the bodyguard until he throws the dog on the car. And the good news is the doggy survives the rest of the movie, spoiler alert, and he survives the hit. But at first I was so scared for that doggy, because I thought it was dead during this. And the next scene, while John gets on a motorcycle to get to a building, as he rolls it on one of the bad guys and gets inside a building, as the tracker and his dog follow them in the building, while Marquis puts up more money, like $40 million in John's head, which is making me nervous for him. We go on a long shot of John killing bad guys after bad guy with gun after gun, and this long shot was amazing to look at. John killing everybody from the top on the top, and John and the trackers shoot it out at each other and have a brief fight until a bodyguard comes in, and the dog grabs him in the arm and throws him and almost kills it until John saves the doggy's life. While I was thinking, no doggy dies in this movie. And I bet you that's what Keanu was thinking too. As John jumps out of the window and runs to the stairs, which has 222 stairs, which is a shitload of stairs, I tell you. As they have a fight on the stairs, and this is going to kill me with the over the top laughter as he shoots the bad guys and throws them on the stairs until he reaches to the top of the stairs. And oh my god, this killed me from laughter. John rolls all the way down from the bodyguard that he shot, and from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs, from 2 different kicks, might I add. And John almost sees death until Kane suddenly shows up and helps him out get to the top of the stairs. And John shoots more bad guys while Kane uses a gun and his stick to kill them. And this fight on the stairs was absolutely brutal to watch, sure, as this climax is brutal. Excuse me. The tracker almost kills John until the tracker shoots the bodyguard and Kane punches him and stabs him with a pencil, which reminded me of the previous movies with the pencil. And the doggy kills the bodyguard by biting its nuts off, and the tracker shoots him in the head, the bodyguard I'm talking about, as the doggy pees on the bastard and watches the duel with his doggy as the duel begins by the 2 men as well as Marquis and Winston drinking to consequences. And John and Kane walk 30 paces behind each other as they're handed the first bullet as well as the pistol, and it made me laugh when Marquis gives Kane the first bullet and Kane says fuck off while Winston witnesses a beautiful sunrise, and they shoot each other. And then that doesn't happen yet. Make it to 20 paces. Shoot again. Doesn't happen again. Finally, at 10 paces, Kane shoots John and almost kills him until Marquis wants to kill John himself. But Winston points out that John didn't shoot the final round, which I caught in my first viewing, as John says consequences and shoots Marquis to the death. And John and Kane are free from the table as Kane walks away and John falls to his death while walking down the stairs, and a burial comes to New York as Winston got his hotel back, and he and the Bowery King celebrate John's life and is known as a loving husband and walks away, as this climax was epic, but it's not quite all the way done yet. After the credits, Kane is about to see his daughter Mia as Akira comes up to him and is about to kill him until the movie is all the way done. And I caught this after credits scene on my 3rd viewing, which I didn't know the first 2 times. As I heard about it after seeing the movie twice, and I get where it was going on why it's there, as Kane killed her father, so it makes sense. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 9.0 out of 10. The action sequences were absolutely epic, over the top, and explosive, and I like and care for these characters as I believe their arcs tremendously. There were shots in this movie that were gorgeous, as well as the production design, as the locations were tremendous to watch, and the sound effects were very well done, and director Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves pulled these stunts off amazingly. This is, in my opinion, the best of the series, as it's super action-packed. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and until we get back with Ballerina, which whenever that comes, you ready, John? Yeah.